Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 Let's Plays. Now Silver's actually starting to wonder whether or not it's the right thing to do to kill this one guy to save his future. And if it was any other case, I would agree. Then the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Stipulate, kind of shit like that. But not in this case. So now we are suddenly in the New City area of Soliana, and what we just got from the shop is, without a doubt, Silver's best ability of the entire game was the shock bracelet. What it does is that by jumping and hitting X in mid-air, Sonic will stomp the floor. He'll come out of nowhere, he'll stomp the floor and create a shockwave that will shock all enemies, allowing you to grab them with your psychokinesis. Yeah, Sonic's just a swell fellow. He doesn't really hold grudges that much, and he's willing to help a pal out if he really needs to. Okay, no, obviously I meant Silver there. It's a slip of the tongue, and it's bound to happen with stuff like this. Anyway, before we actually head into Dr. Eggman's base, which is in the White Acropolis, yes, Silver has to go through that stage too, there are two more town missions that we need to get over with, and this one is, well, now we're starting to fight some Iblis creatures in the present day. Something is obviously going on. I'm not exactly sure why. These Iblis monsters are purple instead of the usual red, which means these are the stronger variety of Iblis monsters. I'm not exactly sure what the difference is besides a change of color. I'm guessing they can take more. I'm not exactly sure. This mission though is really not that hard. It's actually a bit tricky to S rank, but the best thing you want to do is, like, when you get a group of enemies such as this, you always want to go after the Iblis worms, because by destroying the worm, you destroy all the enemies in the surrounding area. So whenever there's a big enemy in a group formation, you always want to go after the big enemy, because most likely or not, that's the one you need to take out in order to destroy all the surrounding ones. There are plenty of boxes and stuff that you can pick up, but to me, I think the best strategy is to just go right up to the big enemy and pimp slap it, and then, just toss it to the side, because once you have an enemy in your psychokinesis grip, all you gotta do is throw it in and it's gonna die, no matter how much HP it has left. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. Just scratching my forehead a bit. Get these itches every once in a while. I think I'm starting to lose my mind here. I'm getting more and more sick and deranged the more I continue this LP. Hey, but here, this was one of the biggest problems I had with the shock bracelet is that, yeah, it works wonders for small enemies and such. Big enemies I'm not exactly too fond of, because what happens to me most of the time is that when I attempt to jump and hit the X button to use the shock bracelet's power, I end up just running into the enemy. Because there is a very slight delay when you hit the X button and when Silver will actually attempt to stomp on the ground to, produce the shockwave, and to me it's a bit unreliable on big enemies. I think the pimp slap is enough. But you still got to get dangerously close to the enemy to use it, to begin with. So there's always a downside.
Looks like
But unfortunately, that's as good as Silver's ever going to get in terms of power-ups. That's pretty much it. I think there's like one more thing we can buy with Silver, but that's not until maybe next part, and even then it is, without a doubt, Silver's most useless ability. So yeah, we pretty much have a beefed out Silver. He doesn't get any more powerful than us. He'll never be able to zip long distances like he did in the cutscenes. His psychokinesis won't get any stronger. He won't be able to produce psychic Hadoukens like we saw in Sonic's scenes, or be able to use like some kind of force power to push things with his mind. That's as good as it's ever gonna get with Silver, and to me it was just a major missed opportunity. Anyway, for the final side mission we do before actually heading to White Acropolis, this is Roberta, this still sounds masculine even though the A is supposed to give off a feminine feel for the name. And this is without a doubt one of the most annoying side missions with Silver. It's a very simple premise. You just gotta prevent the robots from shooting the red barrels. If the enemies manage to hit the red barrel, the side mission immediately ends and you gotta do it all over again. Now, if you stand right in front of the enemy formation and hold down the R trigger, you can, for the most part, grab all of the missiles with one grab. The thing is, though, and just for a little help, the missiles can touch the red barrels if they're in your psychokinesis grab. That won't count as the missiles touching the red barrel, so don't worry about that. But to me, the biggest pain in the ass with this mission is that there are times where you swear to God you're holding down the R trigger, and you're grabbing like 3 missiles to the right, but for some reason the missile that's passing by on your left is not being grabbed with the psychokinesis, and it's gonna end up hitting the barrel. But that's not the case here. We saved Roberta. The explosion. Oh my god. We just killed Roberta. I don't know what to say. I honestly do not. She'll be finally missed. But we need to press on. There's always a few sacrifices when trying to save the future. I guess anyway. I'm just pulling an excuse right out of my ass. Because... anyway. Now it's time to meet the most interesting side character in the entire game. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Hatson the Pigeon. Marvel at its beauty. Yes. We're actually talking to a fucking pigeon. That's all it says. And I have no idea what the hell the point of this thing is. Why can we talk to the pigeon? Why does it have a name, and how do we know its name? Hatson the Pigeon. I want a fan game based off that pigeon. I don't care who does it, Flash Base, Sega. I want a Hatson the Pigeon game. I don't know what the hell we're doing with the game, but you had something planned with that pigeon, because that is the only animal, as far as I'm aware, that we can actually go out of our way to talk to. I don't think we can actually talk to dogs anywhere around this town. I don't think there's actually any art dogs, and I don't think there actually are dogs around this hub world. But there is a pigeon. You purposely programmed the pigeon to stand in that specific spot that you can only talk to at this point in the game, because that pigeon will be gone later in the game. You gave it dialogue. What was the point of that pigeon? I really want to know the answer to this question. So I won't drop the subject. Who is Hatson the Pigeon? But besides that, you might have noticed before we talked to the best character in the game, I was talking to this middle-aged man that just told me to go away and just had this really mean look on his face. Not sure if he's, constipated or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. You might be wondering just what exactly is up with that guy in the first place, but we'll find out more about that asshole later. Not that it doesn't do anything to the plot, but yeah. So now we're finally heading into the next stage with this White Acropolis. We're trying to infiltrate Dr. Eggman's base. So, for the first part, we're pretty much doing Sonic's portion, only Blaze knows just how much the snowboard controls like shit. So she's riding the first stage out on foot, and I love her more because of that. Though with that said, to me the biggest problem with White Acropolis and Silver Story is the camera. The camera, you will always be fighting the camera in this stage. And we'll get into what I mean exactly later during this part of the stage. Well, actually, it's right here, actually. To me, it is impossible to get a good idea of where you're going because of all of these fucking trees. There are too many trees here. Now, if you lose track of an enemy around this section right here, which is actually pretty easy to do, you will find yourself constantly rotating the camera left and right to get a good idea of where the enemy is at, and most likely or not, there's going to be a tree in your way. It is very disorienting, and I almost always get hit there. We can use the spinning attack to kill these enemies with ease, though to me one of the most annoying parts with those enemies we're using the spin attack is what's going to happen, especially in big clusters. You use the spin attack on the group of enemies, and you'll still get hit by their bombs, which I haven't thrown yet. I always get hit by them. Then we got this section right here, which is completely automated. You can hold up, and Blaze will still go down. And you'll want to stop right here and reposition the camera, because you may have noticed that my life count was at 10, and now at beginning the stage it's at 8. And because I edited out 2 deaths here, because the camera completely fucked me over twice. One was because the camera wasn't resetting for me when I was running away from the avalanche. And 2, I got hit too many times because I couldn't see where I was going, because again, the tree was blocking my fucking vision.
Where is the entrance to Eggman's base?
A lot of you have been asking too, like, how exactly does Silver know about Dr. Eggman to begin with? And though I personally don't know the answer myself, see, what I think is, the game assumes that you actually take your time with the hub world and start talking to all the townspeople, all the people with the yellow boxes on top of the head that give you usually useless information about Soliana's town. And I think some townspeople might give you information about Dr. Eggman, although it's usually just like small corpse. Like, I just saw this blue hedgehog like go after this bald madman that kidnapped the princess. I think that's about it, because I refuse to believe that Silver actually got information from Dr. Eggman based off the records that Mephiles showed him in the beginning of the game, because Silver didn't even have time to read any of that shit. By the time Mephiles shows Silver the records of his events, he just immediately shows him the Chaos Emerald to show him that Sonic's the one to blame. We never actually see Silver stop and take a look at the events to read them. So yeah, it does seem out of left field to how Silver exactly knows about Dr. Eggman. Personally, I like to think that besides talking to townspeople, maybe Blaze did some research on herself. I'm not exactly sure, but they never show that. So as far as I'm aware, Silver just knows about Dr. Eggman to begin with, which just confuses a lot of people. That's the best explanation I could think of anyway. But this part of the stage right here, you got these laser gates that when we're playing as Tails, we can just fly right over them. Silver has just an easy time, because even if there are laser gates in your way, if you don't have to really destroy the searchlights, just stand on top of one of the crates and use your psychokinesis to float above the laser gates, and you'll be just fine. In fact, because we can cause objects to levitate by standing on top of them, we can actually really take a major shortcut with this stage. In fact, this boulder right here is our key to ending the stage really quickly. So just use psychokinesis, jump off the boulder, and booyah, we're almost at the end of the stage already. Just like one more, slope to traverse through, and we'll be out of here in no time. Actually, this boulders will be our key to get into the goal ring. Yep, stand on it, R trigger, booyah, end the stage. There's the goal ring right there. That wasn't too bad. But to be honest, I really wish I could just completely rape stages like I did with Tropical Jungle.
That was easy.
And unfortunately, I think from this point on, all the stages get pretty linear. Like, they only want you to follow one path. It'll never get as open-ended as like Tropical Jungle or the White Acropolis. Oh well.
Looks like we've arrived a little too late. What? Oh no!
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, during the Sonic fight with the Egg Genesis, yes, Silver does encounter the Egg Genesis himself.
Guard, huh?
It actually kind of comes out of nowhere. Well, yeah, it's pretty much, I guess he's guarding the White Acropolis. I don't know if Eggman has more than one of these. I would guess so, because, I believe Sonic fights this thing after supposedly Silver fights this one. So yeah, I'm just going to assume there's two of them. But since we're not Sonic, we have to rely on a different way of destroying the Egg Genesis. And there's me thinking I can grab more than one missile at a time with 0 rings, which is almost never a good idea. But anyway, in order to what you're trying to do here with Egg Genesis, you want to grab as many things as possible. Usually, to me, the best thing to grab are the missiles that the Egg Genesis shoots from its compartments. And they want you to focus your attention on the glowing lights, all 4 of them at the moment. Because if you destroy them, the Egg Genesis will slowly but surely start losing its wings. And once it loses all the wings, that's when you can focus all of your power on the big core on the bottom there. The very same core that we were able to homing attack on with Sonic when we were fighting the Egg Genesis during his story. Honestly, though, what I'm trying to do here during this fight is that I'm trying to grab all the missiles as I possibly can, which for some reason you have to be directly in front of the missiles in order for it to register with your psychokinesis. And if you're not exact in your position with it, what's going to happen is you're going to get hit with all the missiles, and it's going to waste time, because now you have to wait for it to, reload its wings and shoot more missiles, and hopefully you can grab more than 2. It is very possible for Silver to grab all the missiles with like 1 psychokinesis bar. Unlikely, but it's very possible. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to ignore the glowing lights. I just want to get to the center of the Egg Genesis, and I want to focus all my attention on the core, because I really don't like this boss fight of Silver. To me, one of the biggest problems with the fight is that the camera is always focused on the Egg Genesis. And I get that, especially when, the Genesis is about to do an attack. But when it's during a cool-off moment like here, when it's just summoning a bunch of enemies, I just wish there was a way I could just manually control the camera so I can see the core at my leisure, and I can have a better time aiming my projectiles at the core itself. But no, the closer you get to the egg Genesis, since the camera's always focused on the Genesis itself, there are times where you can't keep in contact with where you are exactly, because you see here, like, Silver's barely on screen there, and the closer you get, the worse it gets. The only thing I can tell you is, like, just grab as many missiles as you can, get as close to the egg Genesis as you can, and hopefully the missiles will go towards the big core and not on the small lights. I mean, if the missiles hit the small lights, then so be it. You know, it'll make your next time easier. But to me, I just like getting this boss fight over with as soon as possible. So yes, I gotta fight that camera, and yes, I gotta hope all the missiles are in my grab. If not, I just gotta waste more time. I like this boss fight a lot more with Sonic, but only because I can abuse the shoddy programming. But even then, even with Sonic though, the boss fight in general is just much faster, even if you're fighting the Egg Genesis legitimately. Oh, I love that. I'm trying to grab the enemies to aim at the core, but of course the enemy on the ground was closer, so Silver aimed for that. And that's the end of the Egg Genesis boss fight. And just like Sonic's story, you know, it has a desperation attack where it attempts to very slowly crash into you. So you know what? I'm not even going to bother dodging, because and of course its hitbox is actually larger than the model itself. But the moment the Egg Genesis touches the floor, the battle's over. Even if you have 0 rings and you let the Egg Genesis crash into you, you'll die, but the results screen will load up before you can actually complete your death animation. So you have nothing to worry about with that desperation attack. Trust me. You'll be absolutely fine. Let yourself die. In fact, I encourage it. Oh, I'm sorry. Random Chaos Emerald.
That's a Chaos Emerald. It said this gem can transform your thoughts into power. Collect 7, and a miracle's supposed to happen. Keep it as a lucky charm.
I want to reiterate something that Lewis said in the Brain Scratch run of Sonic Adventure. Remember when you had to play special stages in order to get these?
It transforms your thoughts into power.
I have no idea why the Egg Genesis was carrying the Chaos Emerald to begin with. You would think Dr. Eggman would keep that in his personal stash. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, for part 16, we're going to continue our search for Sonic himself. Maybe Silver will finally attempt to shed some light on the subject. Who knows?